Why did God mark Cain for protection even after he killed Abel? One of the first crimes ever committed is the murder of Abel by his brother Cain. Despite committing a heinous crime, God provided protection to Cain by placing a mark on him. This episode addresses why God would protect Cain, especially after initially pronouncing punishment on him. Both Cain and Abel were, at the time, the only sons of Adam and Eve as noted in the Bible. The Genesis account shows that both brothers were engaged in labor, with Abel tending to sheep and Cain working as a farmer. Following the custom of the era, they both offered sacrifices to God. Abel presented the finest from his flock as an offering, whereas Cain offered the lesser quality. Consequently, God favored Abel's sacrifice but rejected Cain's. Perhaps the story would have ended there, but as is often the case with those without faith, Cain harbored resentment. He began to question God's judgment. In Genesis chapter 4, verses 5 to 7, it's written that Cain grew very angry, and his countenance fell. At this point, the Lord addressed Cain, saying, "Why are you angry? Why is your face downcast? If you do what is right, will you not be accepted?" Here, God served a clear reminder to Cain that he was reaping the consequences of his actions, stating, "If you do what is right, will you not be accepted?" However, Cain would have none of that. Instead of heeding God's warning, his jealousy and resentment increased. Before we proceed, let us reconsider why God accepted Abel's offering and rejected Cain's. Although the Bible doesn't explicitly explain why, it's often understood that Abel's sacrifice was made in faith and genuine sincerity, while Cain's offering lacked the same level of sincerity and obedience. It was not about the content of the offering, but the intention of the giver. Unable to understand this, Cain grew bitter towards God's judgment. Frustrated and unable to reach God, he vented his anger by attacking and ultimately killing Abel, God's favorite, who had done nothing wrong. Cain's actions stemmed from jealousy and resentment towards God's righteous judgment. As expected, God confronted Cain for his terrible deed, as described in the Bible. God inquired about Abel's whereabouts, to which Cain famously replied, "Am I my brother's keeper?" He found it convenient to deny his responsibility to his brother. Nevertheless, God proceeded to pronounce his punishment upon Cain. He declared that Cain would be cursed due to his actions. The land would no longer yield crops for him, rendering his farming endeavors useless. In an agrarian society, this was a severe penalty as it meant he would struggle to provide for himself. Additionally, Cain was sentenced to a life of perpetual wandering on the earth. He would lack a stable home or a sense of belonging, leading a nomadic and uncertain life. Now, we get to the point of this video. In Genesis chapter 4, verses 13 to 14, Cain expressed his fears to God, saying, "My punishment is more than I can bear. Today you are driving me from the land, and I will be hidden from your presence. I will be a restless wanderer on the earth, and whoever finds me will kill me." Cain's complaint reflects his anguish over the consequences of his sin and the hardships he believes he will face as a result of God's judgment. However, in his infinite mercy, God heeds Cain's plea. He places a mark on Cain to protect him from being killed by those who might seek revenge for Abel's murder or for some other reason. The Bible does not specify the exact nature of this mark, leading to various speculations and interpretations. Some scholars have speculated that it has something to do with his skin color. So why did God protect Cain from his would-be attackers, even though he committed the grave crime of killing his innocent brother? Because God wanted to prevent a cycle of vengeance. His response was not merely to shield Cain from the consequences of his deeds, but to halt the potential cycle of retaliation that could have followed. God decreed that anyone who killed Cain would face vengeance sevenfold. This was not necessarily a protection in the sense of shielding him from the consequences of his actions. Instead, God allowed Cain to live with the guilt and consequences of his sin, with the hope that he might eventually find redemption and repent. Help others learn about the historical and biblical insights we've explored today by sharing and liking this video.